Today we'll discuss why the New York Islanders should not rush Cole Eiserman to the NHL, even though they need the goal scoring. We'll talk about that. We'll preview tonight's game against the Maple Leafs and a possible injury update on Simon Holmstrom. All that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. We have got a busy show, but I wanted to start talking a little bit about Cole Eiserman. And look, let's face it, Cole Eiserman, Danny Nelson, both of them playing very well for Team USA up at the World Juniors, and that is encouraging, to say the least, as far as the New York Islanders are concerned. Both of those guys are just getting the job done. And you want to see that. You really want to see that. More than a point a game through the first couple of games, that certainly helps. And just getting, having him face some of the top competition around the world in his age group and to still be performing well, I think that speaks volumes about, the potential of Cole Eiserman. But that doesn't mean that he's ready for the NHL just yet. So through 3 games, Cole Eiserman has a goal and 4 points. He is a +1. He has 4 penalty minutes, that coming for Team USA in this year's World Juniors. And so far at BU, 9 goals, 15 points in 16 games. You got to say, as a freshman, a point a game or just a smidge under 15 points in 16 games with 9 of them being goals. Again, pretty solid numbers for a freshman. And everydayers, if you watched, we did a special show last Wednesday with Hadi Kalakesh, the co-host of Locked On NHL Prospects, and he broke down. We talked about, some of the young players. Okay, 2 young players on the Islanders roster, Isaiah George, Maxim Siplikov. We talked about what was and what was not happening at Bridgeport, some of the players there. And we talked about players like Cole Eiserman, who are either playing in college or playing overseas. We broke down some of the top prospects. So that was the Christmas Day show, Wednesday, December 25th. And if you haven't listened to it or watched it, I encourage you to go back and do that. But here's the other thing. Here's what Hadi had to say. This is a little clip from that show, but here's what he had to say about how long it'll take Cole Eiserman to be NHL ready.
When it comes to the amount of years he's going to need to become an NHLer, I think the more patient the Islanders are, the better. I know that, by the time, if we're talking 3 years from now, well, Lee and Nelson are going to be pretty old. They're going to be getting up there in age. There might be a desire to kind of rush him to the NHL. I would be very patient with Cole Eiserman because I think in terms of his processing, his hockey sense on both sides of the puck, there are still some progressions needed. And I think the more time he spends adapting to pro hockey in the AHL before making the jump, the better. Even if he's scoring 40 goals, a season for a couple of seasons, I would still wait it out just to see, are those goals a result of being, an elite goal scorer, an elite shooter, or is it really a result of his reads, his processing, his ability to identify lanes, and all that good stuff? I want to see him score translatable goals before he plays in the NHL. That's kind of the crux of it. So I would say 3 years is a comfortable kind of middle ground. If it takes more, if it takes less, that's fine. But the more patient you are with him, the better.
So there you have it. And thanks again to Hadi Kalakesh of Locked On NHL Prospects for joining us. And he spoke more about Eiserman on the show, talked about what he did well, what he needs to work on. So definitely, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, check that out. But here's the thing, and it sort of complicates things a little bit. I think right now he is learning from Jay Pandolfo. That's his coach at BU. I would let him stay another year at BU. One big reason for that, if he's not ready for the NHL, Bridgeport right now is just a mess. And if major changes are not made in Bridgeport, and that's realistically going to mean a new GM, a new coach, new players for sure. If Bridgeport can't get things straightened out, he may not be able to advance as much and in Bridgeport as he would staying at BU. So let him stay one more year at BU. Maybe that allows Bridgeport to straighten things out. Then he gets a season in the AHL or maybe half a season in the AHL. And then you start thinking about, okay, maybe we could bring him up. But you don't want to rush guys. I don't need to remind Islander fans about the way some draft picks from this team have been rushed. And not only have they been rushed, but rushing them, quite honestly, hurt their NHL careers. And if you go back, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to talk about some of the players who were rushed to the NHL more under the previous regime than under this one. But, you know, it kind of hurt their career. You can go all the way back to Josh Bailey, who was drafted 9th overall in 2008, played right away, and never really developed his offensive game the way scouts initially hoped that he would be able to do it. Nino Neiderreiter also played right away. Ended up being traded. Islanders were certainly happy with the trade. They got Cal Clutterbuck out of that deal. But again, you kind of rushed Nino into the NHL. You know, he's drafted in 2010. He played the minimum 9 games that year. And then by the following season, he's a full-time NHLer. And again, the development was a little slow. Now, compare that to the other first-round pick in 2010, Brock Nelson. Nelson spends 2 seasons at North Dakota, spends 1 full season and, you know, the very end, 4 games at Bridgeport, and then joins the Islanders briefly for the playoffs in 2013, played 1 game, and then is a full-time NHLer, 3 full years of either college or AHL hockey with a cameo in 1 playoff game, and then he joins. And, oh, yeah, you know, certainly by his second full NHL season, Brock Nelson was scoring 20 goals in a season. The Islanders also, you know, they drafted Ryan Strome. They let him play at least part of a season in Bridgeport. Let him stay in juniors a little while. Strome needed a little more time as well in order to be ready for prime time. So you got to be able to be patient with some of these guys. Not all of them are going to develop right away, but you don't want to have another Oliver Wahlstrom situation or Josh Bailey, where, you know, Bailey developed into a good player, but never an elite scorer. And Wahlstrom never could quite catch on. Now he's played 224 NHL games. I can't call him a complete bust, but did he live up to the first round standard that was set for him? No. In my mind, consider this. The New York Islanders need a retool right now. There are players you can build around. There are, let's say, 6, 7, 10 players who you could quite easily build around and start your retool around guys like Barzal, guys like Horvat, guys hopefully eventually like Cole Eiserman. Certainly Ilya Sorokin is going to be part of that. Isaiah George might be. Noah Dobson might be. We still don't know. Alex Romanov could be. Those are the guys you're going to keep and build around. But Cole Eiserman, don't rush him. If it takes, and it probably will take 2-3 years before the Islanders are ready to contend again, if they do a retool where they're playing young kids who are going to make mistakes, fine. Bring up guys and let them make the mistakes. And then when you start to turn the corner a little bit, then you can bring Cole Eiserman up to add that extra dimension. And Islander fans, if you're old enough to remember the Islanders of the 70s, 74-75, they make the playoffs for the first time, go on that magical playoff run all the way to the Stanley Cup semifinals, as they were called back then, would have been the equivalent of the conference finals now. That was their third NHL season, their first playoff season. It took another 2 years before Mike Bossy was added to the mix for 77-78. So each step, Bossy added another dimension. In 78-79, they won the President's Trophy, but they still didn't quite know how to win in the playoffs. And then 1979-80, 19 straight playoff series, 4 straight Stanley Cups from that point on. The team was talented. The team had depth. They had that sniper in Mike Bossy. The Islanders haven't had a Mike Bossy since Mike Bossy had to hang him up. Ziggy Palffy, Pierre Turgeon, Pat LaFontaine, they were good. They were good goal scorers, but none of them were the sniper, the all-time great sniper like Mike Bossy. Can Cole Eiserman eventually become a player like that? Maybe. We don't know. Hottie had a lot to say about his shot and his talent, but don't rush him. Don't blow it up. Don't take away his confidence and make him look bad before he develops his all-around game and skills. And let's do it the right way, because this team has struggled mightily in the last decade plus to draft and develop talent. They need to do it the right way with Cole Eiserman. All right, we've got a lot more to get to. We'll have an injury update on Simon Holmstrom. We'll preview tonight's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a defenseman who was with the Islanders from their original season all the way through the 78-79 season. Wasn't big, but he was tough, and he was one of the fan favorites in the 70s for this team. Let's see if you can guess who this spark plug type defenseman is. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, and they've saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. So we got to give a little injury update. And I hate these injuries because the Islanders let's be honest, they've been dealing with a lot of them this year. And in the Sunday game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, with a little less than 9 minutes left in the third period, Simon Holmstrom left the ice and did not return to the game. Now, there was no practice Monday because the Islanders had a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. So according to the CBA, no practice. We will not get an update on Simon Holmstrom until Tuesday morning. Now, I don't know if there's going to be a morning skate because the Islanders game in Toronto on Tuesday, today, is a 1 o'clock in the afternoon matinee for New Year's Eve. So I guess the theory is you watch the Islanders against the Maple Leafs, and then you have your evening out to celebrate New Year's Eve. So, yeah, it's going to be a challenge. Obviously, you know, you've got Matt Martin, you've got Pierre Engvall. Those are your two spare forwards right now. But Simon Holmstrom, you know, quietly has been playing really well. 9 goals, 13 assists in 36 games. So he's on pace for about 20 goals and about, let's say, 47 or 48 points on the year. He's averaging a little more than 16 and a half minutes of ice time per game. He can kill penalties, although with the Islanders PK being as bad as it's been, I don't know if you want to put that on your resume if you're Simon Holmstrom. But again, he has experience and is capable of doing it. In fact, right now, with the injuries and everything else, Simon Holmstrom is 4th on the Islanders in points with 22. He is a +2, and he only has 6 penalty minutes. Now, he only has 10 hits in 37 games. That, as we've mentioned, not one of his fortes, but he is, again, playing better each week. You see improvement from Simon Holmstrom. He appears to be picking up his pace of offense and overall scoring as compared to last year, and certainly as compared to the year before. Every day, as you've heard me mention, that I think Simon Holmstrom has the raw athletic skill to get better offensive numbers than what we've seen him get. Part of it is confidence. And I think, you know, the coaching staff emphasized to Simon Holmstrom when he was a rookie and really up until now, you're playing every day because you're sound positionally. You back check, you block shots, you play, you know, defense more than guys up until recently like Oliver Wahlstrom, you know, who didn't do that to the coaching staff's liking on a consistent basis. So for Holmstrom, I think he is emphasized, for better or for worse, the defensive aspects of his game. And I think over time, I'm not ever saying Simon Holmstrom is going to be a 30-goal guy in the NHL, but is he capable of 20 to 25 goals to be eventually a second line kind of a guy who can score, you know, give you 20 goals, 45, 50 points a year, kill penalties, place, you know, solid defensive hockey, and occasionally score that little highlight reel goal or set up a highlight reel goal. Yeah, I think he's capable of that if he works on it and he gets the opportunities. And I'll say this, if the Islanders ever do actually retool, which again, everydayers, you know, I think that's overdue from this organization and from this team. But if the Islanders ever do it, Simon Holmstrom could easily find himself on the Islanders' second line as early as the end of this season after the trade deadline. Because if they do trade a Brock Nelson or a Kyle Palmieri or an Anders Lee or a J.G. Pajot, spots will open up in the top 6. And I can tell you right now, Casey Cizikas, Hudson Fasching, Kyle McLean, those guys are not necessarily going to be in that top 6. Simon Holmstrom is one of those players who I think will have a chance to do it. Now, we'll hear hopefully an update on Tuesday morning when Patrick Roy meets with the media. We'll keep an eye on X because I will tweet out the updates as soon as I get them. And we'll know before the 1 o'clock face-off on Tuesday whether or not Holmstrom is seriously injured enough to miss this game. I would think Engvall would replace him rather than Matt Martin, only because it's a similar skill set or closer to that skill set, but you never know whether or not Patrick Roy feels like he may need the physicality of a Matt Martin in a game against a Maple Leafs team that certainly has some bigger and more physical players in their lineup. All right, we're going to talk about that game. Remember, it's an afternoon game, 1 o'clock Eastern time up in Toronto. We will preview that game. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. You can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from our hosts, Steele and Flip. Find the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Islanders, Maple Leafs, getting underway at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, New Year's Eve day. That is today, and it should be interesting. By the way, we already know no Austin Matthews for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Matthews has been ruled out. The Leafs, by the way, have lost 3 of their last 4 games, and that includes the loss back on December 21st back in Toronto against the Islanders. That was a 6-3 win for the Isles. Remember, the Isles will also play them again on January 2nd, so that will be Thursday at UBS Arena. That's a normal 7:30 Eastern time start. So, again, these two teams going to play 3 games in about 12 days, and that's it. That's the whole season series. And yeah, the Maple Leafs definitely missing Austin Matthews right now, but the Islanders will not have to face him. Their last game was a 5-2 loss over the weekend to the Washington Capitals. And in that game, it was Matt Murray in goal for the Maple Leafs. Odds are we will therefore probably see Joseph Woll again, with Dennis Hildeby likely to be the available backup. But again, we'll see. Maple Leafs, 12th in the league in goals scored, 13th in goals against. The power play, despite all the very talented players they have, only ranked 19th with a 20.4% success rate. The PK, 10th, 81.4% success rate. That will be the challenge. Again, Islanders do not want to give these guys more time and space by allowing them to be on the power play. As of right now, Toronto tied with the Florida Panthers for first place in the Atlantic Division. The Bruins just 2 points back. The Lightning 2 points back of the Bruins, but they have 3 games in hand on Toronto and Florida. So, and even Ottawa's just 6 points out of first place. So that Atlantic Division is all bunched up. Mitch Marner leading the team with 50 points, 37 of those assists. William Nylander, 23 goals already. He's second on the team with 41 points, 7 goals, 11 assists on the power play for Nylander, 19 power play points for Marner, 5 goals, 14 assists. Obviously, Pajama Boy, John Tavares, 18 goals, 37 points in 36 games. So we know, that this team can do it. Offensively, they have a lot of elite talent at the top, even without Austin Matthews. Joseph Woll, 10-6-0 on the year, a .909 save percentage at 2.57 goals against average. The line combinations for the Maple Leafs as of now, and here's what it looks like. Tavares, Max Pacioretty, and Mitch Marner, they were the top line. David Kampf, Matthew Knies, and William Nylander, the second line. Max Domi centers Bobby McMahon and Nicholas Robertson, who has forever been mentioned in trade rumors. He's on the third line. Pontus Holmberg, Steven Lorentz, and Connor DeWar are the fourth line. Morgan Riley and Oliver Ekman-Larsson are the top pair, but Ekman-Larsson may not necessarily be available. We'll check on that. Jake McCabe, Chris Tanev are the middle pair. Connor Timmins and Simon Benoit are the third pair, with Joseph Woll and Dennis Hildeby in goal. Anthony Stolarz on IR, as is Kalle Yarkrock. Austin Matthews is out, and Ekman-Larsson will be a game-time decision. So they list him as day-to-day. Islanders going to need to bring their A game. They do play well against the Leafs. That's the thing. And they need for that to continue. Cannot let the Maple Leafs enter the zone with time and space and with speed and momentum. Do not let those guys, William Nylander, do those kind of things where you're on your heels and then you're out of position. Stay out of the box. Don't let that power play get going against you. And obviously, make sure you clear that zone, something that has plagued the Islanders all season long. Time for our Islanders' birthday of the day. We're a day early because he's a New Year's baby, but happy, this would have been New Year's Day, the 77th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Jerry Hart. Unfortunately, he passed away May 12th, 2023 at the age of 75. But Jerry Hart, 5'9", 175 pounds, and as tough as they come. The native of Flin Flon, Manitoba, made his NHL debut with the Red Wings in 68-69, but became a full-time NHLer in 70-71 with Detroit, and then joined the Islanders in their expansion season, played 47 games for them in that year, and stayed with the team through the 78-79 season when the Quebec Nordiques selected him in the expansion draft, and then he finished his career with the St. Louis Blues. Never an offensive guy. Never scored more than 26 points in an NHL season. Never scored more than 6 goals in an NHL season. Played in 730 games, 29 goals, 179 points, and 1,240 penalty minutes. Add 3 goals, 15 points, and 175 penalty minutes in 78 playoff games, with 58 of them coming with the New York Islanders. Jerry Hart's best game as an Islander offensively, January 6, 1976, at the Nassau Coliseum. The Kansas City Scouts, now known as the New Jersey Devils, invading the Coliseum. Bill McKenzie, the goalie for the Scouts, Billy Smith for the Islanders, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, after the Islanders took a 1-0 lead on a goal by Billy Harris, Jerry Hart sets up Brian Trottier in the second period to make it 2-0. Billy Harris, the other assist. Then Jean Potvin and Jerry Hart set up Clark Gillies a mere 31 seconds later, and it was 3-0 Islanders. Dennis Duperry got the Scouts on the board, but at the end of 2 periods, the Islanders held a 4-1 lead. In the third, Hart scores a goal 6.5 minutes into the game. That made it 6-1. Brian Trottier on the assist, and then Hart closes out the scoring, his second of the game, third of the year. Andre St. Laurent with the assists. Islanders crushed the Scouts 8-1. Shots on goal in this game, 42 for the Islanders, 22 for the Scouts. Billy Smith, 21 saves. For Jerry Hart, 2 goals, 2 assists. That's a 4-point night for the defenseman. He was a +3, and he scored on both of his shots on goal in this game. So scrappy, determined, a great teammate. Those are words I would use to describe Jerry Hart. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We will be back tomorrow. There will be a show. I know it's New Year's Eve, but we will have our show premiering on YouTube at the usual time. And we will have our key takeaways from this afternoon's game against the Maple Leafs, and we'll have our weekly farm report on all things Bridgeport Islanders, so make sure you join us for that. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, shoot us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com, and if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're always happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game, so join me for some instant insight and analysis. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.